All right, let's just we might as well just actually. I keep mentioning FaZe and S-Attack standing in for FaZe, but we might as well actually follow the story of how we got to that point because that was the big last week, pretty much the day after Friday last week is where it all kicked off.
As far as I know, these are the facts.
Or no, right? Thursday last week.
You can correct me if you saw something differently because I know there was one detail people did get wrong. Here's what I heard happened. Right, I don't have it all, at least some of it's in DMs. I'm going to go fucking check it now for a talk show. Basically, as far as I know, it went along the lines of like, FaZe themselves claim that they like asked Blast, like, can we as an emergency use config as like our substitute? And I believe technically config had been registered by Heroic because Heroic used him at the World Finals, as people remembered. But I think there was even then an intimation, I don't know if you saw this, that like maybe config himself didn't know Heroic had registered him as a sub. Like maybe they just did it as sort of like, you know,
what is the
and then what I heard was
everything the players say with a grain of salt.
Yes, that's true.
Of course, you know, it's like the players.
Some of this might not be factual, exactly. This is what's claimed at least, right? So it's claimed essentially already shenanigans there. Like first thing I'm asking, which no one else was asking, is why are Heroic registering players who haven't agreed to be a sub out of it? That's already one, but no one got into that because there was so much drama. So if you bring it back, then it becomes that even though supposedly FaZe were initially told they could use config as an emergency stand-in, then somehow that was like retracted and now they couldn't. And so then last minute, obviously they had to go instead and get the person they got right, which was S-Attack.
Yeah.
Now the reason the S-Attack one in itself is confusing is because at the end of the same Blast group stage, Nip needed a stand-in. So then everyone was like, then why aren't they using S-Attack? But that's where an interesting detail comes. Apparently, S-Attack was never registered by Nip as the sub. That's what I heard somewhere. And if you notice this Maxter guy who came in, I'm assuming that's who they had registered. So essentially that also, let's fuck implies. It just says they never, under any context, plan on using S-Attack against Semmler. So this is the last detail to mention that is dodgy. Is I understand in that situation, right, there's no perfect solution there beyond like, look, is there anyone who's not registered at all who can come and play as a stand-in? That would be the perfect scenario. But if you're going to pick one, right, here's what I don't get, Semmler. There's people who actually thought this resolved the matter. This took the same scenario and made it worse. Beforehand, as you say, Config is not a player under contract to anyone. Yeah, he's registered as a sub for Heroic. I don't think he'll ever play another game for Heroic. It's not like he has some conflict of interest where he should want Heroic to win. I mean, he's not even going to be playing them directly, but you know what I mean? He shouldn't like want them to win. There's no conflict of interest with Config joining. He's only been registered and not even apparently under his own awareness as a sub. He's not in Heroic. So actually, FaZe adding him is just about the emergency sub rule. Are they allowed to use it? Was it not done right? What's mad is the solution that you can instead take S-Attack contracted to a different player, a different team.
Yeah.
That's mental because now you've inserted a conflict of interest into
indeed.
what already is a scuffed scenario. Like I'm now using someone who might be incentivized to actually lose the game, guys. Like, you know what I mean? Like this happened basically 2 years ago, if you remember, during all the Flashpoint shit. Do you remember during the Flashpoint 3, the one where it was the RMR, the EURMR, there was that team where NBK was like on contract for OG, but he played with that team double pony, if you remember. And there was potentially they even could have played each other if they'd have both like won the first match, but they didn't. And they did the same thing. They did the same stupid fucking ruling where they said, yes, you can use someone under contract to the other org. Every dickhead fan said that stupid thinking of like, why would anyone risk getting fat? Guys, every fucking coach risks being banned forever. That happened. Stop that stupid logic. That logic is like, well, the criminal do a crime when he could go to prison. He doesn't plan on being caught and he wants the money. And he's also not really smart and good at business, hence why he's making bad decisions, like doing armed crime, you fucking clown. It's the way they all sit there like they're some perfect fucking entity. Like, I always make my decisions. Like, I think through every possible scenario and I always pick the most logical and correct. No human behaves that way. We're fucking animals, got instincts. You're just doing shit based on stimuli. So anyway, to bring it back, the point is, the maddest part about all of this is you've done the same thing again, because if you remember, the reason I bring that case up is they famously thought that, it was actually Flashpoint this time, thought that ruling made sense as well, Semmler. But of course, he wouldn't play if you played his whole team. Right, here's what makes that even more mad, you dumb cunts. You've now made the conflict of interest even worse, because now if they end up playing against his former team, they get an easier game, you fucking idiots! You imbeciles! It's bad enough that if he played in the game, he might throw it. You're just ensuring the game got easier for the team that he's already contracted to. Spoiler, why is he fucking contracted? The whole thing should never have been. I genuinely think this whole thing was a travesty. And the worst part of it all, Semmler, for real, is I think the reason this was all made this way is because there was no time left. It was like, wasn't this like the day before they were going to play the games? There was no time and they had to just make a decision. And as usual, TOs often don't, unfortunately, Semmler, look at the rules and think through what they tried to do was this. Remember, Blast's customer, I'll make this point very clearly, Blast's customer is the Team Orgs. That is their customers, those Blast partner teams. So this looks to me somewhere like Blast only cared about what the partner teams did. They didn't care about conflict of interest. Or they just thought, right, what's the best way to make it better between Nip and they just sorted out the kids in the play box, in my opinion.
Few things. There's quite a few things on this whole topic.
Jump in.
But so one thing that stands out is that clearly it seems to me, looking in from the outside, that it's multiple people handling communication with the teams. And so that is how you could potentially have this fuck up where perhaps one person at Blast is saying one thing and another person at Blast is saying another thing, and never the twain shall meet. And this is how you wind up in this sort of scenario.
You do think to yourself, there should be a guy, and his job is like, I'm the one who makes the decision. And
yes,
you talk to that guy, you know what I mean?
You would think that.
Because I know what you mean.
After all,
the door I didn't open, you know, to Semmers. I just reported what had been told. But the door I didn't open is the one that you've suggested, which you can talk about now, which is, I'll tell you, even if players are cool guys, they lie so fucking habitually on these topics. For example, when they say that, Semmler, here's how I, as the fucking policeman interviewing them, would instantly break them. You know, when they go, but I asked Blast, and they said, yes, who's Blast? Who did you ask at Blast? You know what I mean? These are the questions, you know, as journalists don't ask. These are the questions that are important. The question is, was it some fucking admin? Was it the guy just with, like, went on the shuttle with the auto, or was it actually, like, you know, the main guy who, as you're saying, whoever's job it is to decide these, like, I assume like top tournament admin referee guy or something, or tournament director or something. That's who should make the decision.
The reason why I want to bring that up is because Blast in their own statement pointed that out, saying that, you know, miscommunication on our side of things, and we're going to take the steps necessary to address this for the future.
Did you see that, Semmler? Did you see my response to that? Because you know why I went in on Blast on that one? The way that was framed there, Semmler, makes it sound like it was Blast who fucked up. It makes it sound like maybe someone who wasn't qualified told Nip, oh, you can use that play, that'll be okay. And then later found out, like, shit, we fucked up. Because here's the thing, Semmler, if it had been if it had been FaZe who fucked up, TOs don't make it that soft when they phrase it, mate. They would be like, FaZe incorrectly, and then all the hate would go on to FaZe. So the way that was phrased, I know what you're talking about, which made me think that.
Remember that Blast right now are in the bitch position of the scene, in the sense that they run basically behind ESL, you know, and take whatever they can get from ESL, and all of their talent is getting poached by ESL now, as half of the Katowice fucking talent roster shows. Like, there's nothing helping Blast anymore. They've got nothing. They don't have a leg to stand on, and so they're not exactly going to go burning ships with the fucking teams, you know, because it's like they're literally the only thing they've got now. I mean, they don't have talent to call their own. They have a format and maybe some stream stuff, you know, like, oh, some cool graphics, whatever. That's Blast. Apart from that, they're ESL light. You know, that it's tragic the way that it's gone. But as far as so that's why I don't think that they would come down to like a ton of bricks on any of the teams or any of the players, because I don't think they can afford to take that risk. Because if any of the teams are just like, yeah, okay, fuck you, bye. That's it. Blast are done. They've got nothing. They'll go run Fortnite tournaments for the rest of the time. But they're done in CS if that's how it went. But like to bring it back, there's quite a few points that need to be talked about. And one point that needs to kick off right off the bat is that in the 2022 rulebook that we have access to, that was sent to me by an admin, we have it here when it comes to the team's roster. The team's roster must be submitted to Blast at least 3 weeks prior to the applicable tournament stage. The submitted roster. Save that in respect to teams which qualify for the so-called Blast Premier Showdown and or Blast Wildcard. Blah, 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 blah. The submitted roster must be submitted to Blast within 48 hours of such qualification being confirmed. That's for the showdowns. Blast shall have the right to impose sanctions. Okay. There was another bit here. Only players included on the submitted roster only the players included on the submitted roster are eligible to compete at the applicable tournament stage unless otherwise said by Blast. So this kind of sets up the timeline here, because I know that people are saying, oh,
didn't people imply, I don't know the factual element of this, didn't people imply FaZe had like Olaf as the sub listed or some shit like that?
Yes.
Wasn't that what they said?
That is the thing. And so that's where all of this gets, this is why I'm not willing to say this is all on Blast. It appears that perhaps there was some miscommunication on Blast side, where maybe 2 or 3 people were talking to the teams, and so things got crossed up and they don't know what they were saying. Whatever, it happens. but I'm willing to place some pretty. I'm willing to place quite a bit of responsibility on the teams as well, because this is clear as day in the rule books. This was also in the 2020 rule book, 2021 rule book. Like, this is a rule that hasn't changed for a long time, years now. So if you're a top team and you've been competing with Blast for years, by now, whoever the manager is of the team, the coach, whoever's responsibility it is to deal with the org, to deal with the team and the tournament organizer relationship, whoever's in charge of that should know by now, after several years of this same rule book being used, the same rule being used, okay, we need to submit our roster 3 weeks ahead of time. So that already, let's establish that. Now, the reason why we're here is because Rain, God bless him, had a kid. Congratulations. Fucking A, awesome. But that's not something that just drops out of the sky, you know? I'm pretty sure there's a lead up period.
That was one thing I wondered about, mate, is like when you say like emergency sob, the joke is the emergency sob is Rain's child. We knew he was coming 9 months ago. What are you talking about? Like, you know what I mean? I'm with you, Semmler. It's not like it's not like they told you like some fucking German DHL driver. You know what? Your child will come anywhere between January 1st and I don't know, December 20th. So stick around all year. Like, it was going to happen within these few months. Like, I agree, Semmler. Like, they could have planned out. And here's one problem I have with this situation from the FaZe side. Look, it's fine to ask. Like, if you ask, hey, can I use config? Because obviously that would be better for you. But I'm always suspicious of that. So I'm like, let's be real. They wouldn't want to use Olofmeister. He's going to be fucking washed. The real problem, I think, with this move is this. Anytime you don't want to use your real sub, who, as far as I know, could play, because he's not as good as the guy, because he's not as good as config. Like, that just sounds like you're trying to get an edge. You registered Olof. I didn't. Play with him if you think he's good.
So that just shows the level of professionalism that the teams are putting on display, because it's not only FaZe, who apparently just submitted the roster with Olofmeister without even consulting Olofmeister, because apparently Olofmeister's birthday was happening this weekend, and he had planned a trip for months ahead. And I have a clip of him, because obviously he was streaming at the time that all this news broke. And so people were going to his stream being like, hey, did you know that you were supposed to be a sub for FaZe? And he's like on the stream, like, no, I had no idea. I'm leaving for my birthday this weekend, guys. Like, if they'd have told me, I would have been able to play, but he was just like, listen, I've got a trip, I'm out. So Olaf didn't know. But then there's also Heroic, who were putting config on as their sub, and apparently config didn't know. I mean, again, we have to take this with a grain of salt, because again,
but this way, if that is true though, Semmler, I actually think, look, it shouldn't be a big deal. It's like a very minor thing. There should be like a minor punishment if you do that. Like, how can you register someone who didn't say they wanted to play the tournament?
Right? Because config is just like, well, I didn't know that I was a sub for Heroic either. And you're just like, what the fuck is going on with these teams?
And remember, logically, Heroic has now cost config, who, remember, they are not paying, is not under contract. They've cost him a chance to play in the best team in the world.
Indeed.
The fuck?
Indeed. So that's already a big takeaway.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
and then the storyline continues, because then apparently it was within a week of the start date that they said that they asked, according to Twists, where it was like 5-6 days.
Still in it. I know. Come on. What
emergency?
It's
just like, hey, can we use config? And apparently Blast are like, yeah, you can use config. That's fine. And so then, and then of course, other teams who I guess are familiar with the rule book are like, wait a second, isn't config supposed to be the sub for Heroic? Like, how does this work out? And Blast are like, oh shit, that's right. We have a rule book that we've been using for years. How did we get this wrong? How did we fuck this up?
Unprecedented. We've done these things in the past. Exactly. That's what they never do.
Absolute clown fiesta from top to fucking bottom. Teams, tournament organizer, players, it's all fucking clusterfuck. And you're just sitting here going, well, this is the perfect way to start the year off.
I've got a little bomb for you. I've got some info most people in the public don't have.
Oh,
I heard.
Okay.
Spoiler, when I say I heard, it is less sexy. It essentially means I haven't nailed everything down, I haven't folded up everything. I just heard this, but I do have legit sources, better than anyone who's listening to the show. Including, even if you're simple, way better source than you, dick. And I know everything about your career you don't know about, you fucking clown. Like that time when you didn't board that plane where you told SK you were going to fly to Brazil and be in there. Oh, people don't know about that one. Don't worry, there'll be a video coming. So what I'll just say is this. Here's the gem. What I'm going to say is this. The reason why the precedent is so important, Semmler, is I heard previously this is already something that was resolved completely the other way in a similar situation. I've heard previously evil geniuses wanted to play, I think it was a Blast tournament with Kenny S or something as like a player to stand in. And they were told they couldn't because he was contracted to G2. Then Blast turns around and lets fucking Esotag, who was contracted to NIP, play in the FaZe clan. So you've literally taken the same two scenarios and done the opposite.
I'm so tired of this bullshit.
Look, I will say, I already heard that. I don't know that for a fact. But
okay.
It sounds
if that's true,
sure.
I bet at that. So the tongue-in-cheek tweet that I made on Thursday morning was, I want to see Forrest on FaZe now.
Oh, right, there you go. Exactly. That's a good joke. That's a good joke. Yeah, exactly.
Fucking hey. Listen, that would have been sick to see Forrest back in it. He's out there. He's out there grinding. He's streaming every day. He's playing games. He's keeping sharp. No contract holding him back. Could have brought him in and avoided any conflict of interest if it didn't go perfectly for FaZe and then Nip getting knocked down. How did the bracket actually play out?
Well, if you remember, that's just for seeding for that next phase.
Of course, but if FaZe had lost to OG today, and and Nip beat Astralis, we still could have had the conflict happening. But FaZe are through, and so it worked out. It worked out for Blast. They got lucky. Basically, they got lucky that OG kind of just dropped the ball. To be fair, because OG had their chances. I watched that series. They absolutely had their chances on Mirage, and they weren't able to get it done. And I think that tanked them for Ancient afterwards. But there could have been a world where FaZe get knocked down. OG are going through to the spring finals, and we potentially have yet that conflict again. It's just fascinating, man. It's just fascinating to see that this is still possible with organizations that have years. Like, this is it. It's like you're the cream of the crop now. If you're still running S tier tournaments in CSGO, ESL, Blast, like, you have years of experience. You're supposed to be on the ball. Like, this stuff should all be ironed out. How is this still happening? Yep. It's fascinating to watch it happen. I mean, great. I mean, it gives us stuff to talk about. So,
the problem is, Semmler, I've got to say, this ties into a classic topic, which is before your time. Me and Richard, unfortunately, even before you joined, mate, we've just discussed to death all these conflict of interest scenarios. And basically the conclusion we come to at the end is this. One, most people genuinely don't know what a conflict of interest is. They don't. They can't even break down the word. Like, spoiler, it's self-contained in the word. It's a conflict of interests. Like, all you have to do is look, what are the multiple interests and why are there a conflict? As soon as you do that, you figure it out. But I'll say the more important thing. It's not just that they don't understand it. I think most people don't think it's a big deal, Semmler, and here's why. Because when I'm saying, like, but then NBK could just do that. They go, but why would it? They think it's like a real scenario that has to happen. They don't understand that the reason that you watch out for these things and don't let them happen is so that then you never have to wonder, did he throw the game? Did someone... You don't ever have to worry about, because you prohibit it. You stop it happening. Exactly. And like you're saying as well, you make it in the rules, so you have all these precedents set. And not only do you look at your rules set, you look at what you did previously, like you're saying, because as I'm saying, if that's true, that EGG2 story, that's just unfair to EG then, and Kenny S. Why is Kenny S not allowed to play? But Essetag is like, I don't get it, mate. It's just that just sounds whack.
Well, it's all in the moment, and also, I mean, it's not that would require some principles or that you're holding to, like, you're going to try and actually follow some kind of consistent thread, and follow that thread and try and say, like, okay, I'm going to make my decisions based on these principles. Actually, fuck that. The top team in the world needs something. All right, we're going to bend over backwards and let them have it. It's fine. I mean, they would have let the config thing happen if there weren't other teams who were saying, hey, by the way, there's a rule book. We're all following the rules. Why do they get to not follow the rules, right? So if it weren't for the other teams calling them out, Blast would have been like, this whole situation, like, config would have been playing for FaZe, and fuck the rules and fuck everything else. It would have all just happened hunky dory. But now Blast, I mean, I get Blast. Blast are in a tough they're in a tough spot. They're trying to hold on to whatever market share they're allowed to keep, from ESL, and they're just trying to keep the teams happy, because they understand now the way that ESL figured it out to get back in the good graces of the community, because nobody seems to remember that ESL were once despised by the community, and ESL could do nothing right until ESL figured out that keeping the players happy is the key to unlocking the love and adulation from the community. So long as you keep the players happy, it doesn't matter what the fuck else you do. So long as you keep the players happy, that's the key. And so Blast are starting to figure that out too, where there's like, maybe we need to do the same thing. Problem is, we're going to wind up in a situation like Dota soon enough, where the players are going to be kings.
Oh, they're just
going to make demands everywhere, and it's going to become unmanageable, because the players are, the players are going to turn into, I don't know, little. I was about to say little Attilas, but it's not. Like
no, they're like little Lord Fultroy. I know what you mean. Just,
there you go.
The joke is, we actually already went through that, but came through the other side. Cause you remember it was like with the SL and Fallen and fucking Taz and those guys. They used to just make any demand they wanted back in the days, and everyone had to jump to attention and run and get it, like some fucked up bellhop of esports, just fixing hotels and it was ridiculous back in the day. I agree, Sam. I really hope we don't go back to that, but especially because, as this scenario shows, mate, players play so fast and loose loose with the truth and precedents and what's happened past. Because essentially, I mean, understandably, they're incentivized. They're just trying to get the best for them and the best situation for them, and they're trying to win and get the money. So they don't really care, I'm afraid, about, well, the right thing to do would be not to you. You know, they don't care about that jazz. By the way, as an aside, you know what you said there, though? Like, it is a really hard spot for Blast. I know what you mean, Semmler. I agree. It is. It's difficult. There's no perfect scenarios. But at the same time, boo fucking who. We took millions from all like shady people in the Middle East and the Danish government to make a video game tournament. And what happened then? You won't believe this. I have to make the decisions. I have to actually make the rules. And then enforce them. Oh God, like, fucking suck it up, Buttercup. You're trying to actually rule the world of one game of esports. Like, is that too much for you? Well, I'll tell you what then. Just roll down your shorts in a video game Minecraft. Get out that little piggledy-wiggledy dick you've got. Yank it like you're trying to start an old lawnmower back in the day, trying to get some money to go to the baseball game. Yank that shit, and then after about 30 seconds, a little liquid comes out. That's all you can handle. Get the fuck out of esports. Get some competent people in. Here's why it doesn't actually make sense as an excuse, Semmler. Because you know what? You know this. People like ESL have tournament admins that have done that job for 10 years. They have people who've done like online cops to like Pro League to like IM Sydney to majors they've done all scales of cups. And that's why, by the way, notice this very rarely happens with ESL, because ESL know their rule book, mate. They're Germans. Like, they know what's possible. They know how to make a ruling, even if it upsets a player. Like, I don't say they do it right every time, but mate, Blast just constantly had these problems between that shit like a few years back when they let the players fucking boycott a match for 3 hours because Christian heard, like, someone heard the call. Like, Blast, you're right. Blast just roll over every time, mate. Like, I'm sorry, in this business, you've not only got to have a spine, but how are you going to beat ESL if you don't have a spine? Like you're saying, if you're just going to be the bitch to ESL than the bitch to the players, you're just going to end up with inferior products and inferior results. Like, I actually feel sad in this case, because I actually think Blast, if they did it, but here's the stupid thing, because I know they take care of the players and the talent, I actually think they have more leeway. You could have some balls and fucking make a decision. And even if they cry now, I tell you what, players behind the scenes actually will respect it. The legit ones will respect it. At least you made the choice. You know what I think people hate more than anything? It's inconsistency. As long as you're consistent with your decision, then I know I can live with it, you know.
Well, you can tell that they don't respect it right now, because if the players respected Blast as a tournament organizer, they would be handling it directly with Blast. The fact that the players go out onto Twitter immediately as this story breaks, as soon as this shit kicks off, you got directly. You got Twist, exactly. You got everybody hopping on, and they, you know what's going on there. It's like, okay, good. It's giving us more context on what's happening, but also you have to take that context with a grain of salt, because who the fuck knows if what they're saying is true?
Which no one's doing, as you say.
Anything to get as much pressure as possible from the community.
Everyone's just taking it at face value.
Blast.
Sadly, no one gave it a grain of salt, though. Something like what they did is their brain goes, "Do I like twists? If yes, then everything is
yes." He is obviously correct.
Exactly.
And so, well, shout out to Twist, because he was actually interacting a little bit, because I asked him those questions. I'm like, because it was vague at first, where he's just like, it's been a while that we've known that we had conflict, blah, blah. I'm like, what is a while? Is it a day, 5 days, a week, a month? Like, it's 3 weeks minimum on the roster lock. Did you know before the roster lock at least, right? And fair enough, he responded where he thought he was like 5 to 6 days or something. So it's like, okay, Twist gave us some context there, but it's still, I'm still in this sort of situation where it's just like, it is mad to me that players are going onto social media when something like this is kicking off, where they could potentially be out influencing the outcome of this of the whole situation by getting the community riled up and then pointing that community at Blast. And we know that the tournament organizers, they are not going to deal well with that kind of pressure. And so that's probably how you get this S-Attack situation, to like bring it back full circle. That's probably how you get this S-Attack situation where it's just like, FaZe are just going, okay, well then give us S-Attack. Blast are probably well aware of the conflict of interest, but they're like, fine. They need to make they need to make this go away. They're so like, oh, is S-Attack listed as a sub anywhere? No. Okay, fine. Play. You can use him. Obviously missing the whole point.
Exactly. Because that's the other reason. Here's why, if you're Blast. Here's why, by the way, if you're Blast, you don't do this, because we haven't read any like fucked up intermissions. But we could. Like, I'll give you an obvious one I could do right now, Semmler. Maybe by this logic, maybe Blast doesn't like FaZe that much, so they were like, FaZe getting config, but he's actually really good. They might win. Nah, they can't have config. What about S-Attack? Wasn't he a bit shit? Yeah, you know what? Let him have S-Attack. That's what it makes it sound like. Like, who's this? Is it? What the fuck? Who runs this team?
I don't even know, dude. At this point, it's just mad to me that the teams are submitting. If this is true, right, where it's just like the teams are just submitting rosters without consulting the players that they're using as I keep wanting to say subscribers as substitutes. You know, it's just like, so config Olafmeister, like, it still blows my mind that Olafmeister finds out while he's streaming. He's like, wait, what? Like, I'm a sub for the team. Wait, I'm going on a trip this weekend.
And also, logically, Semmler, this would have been the most appropriate phase of the Blast Premier circuit to use config in, because you don't get eliminated now. This is not the knockout stage.
I don't even.
Just keep going.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.